What's up, my squids? Today we had such a good podcast. We got Dr. Ramsey Nijem, head strength coach of the Sacramento Kings. We dropped dimes today. I'm talking about good stuff. Bars for the entire episode. Don't skip anything. I mean, we talked about his role. I mean, he's the youngest strength coach in the NBA. So we talked about his grind, how he got there. We talked about his advice for other strength coaches, young strength coaches, how to get in the game. We went into the specifics. I mean, we talked about vertical jump. We talked about how to get stronger. We talked about what his favorite lifts are for the vertical jump. We talked about health. We talked about monitoring. I mean, what did we not talk about? That's the real question. We covered basically anything that you could possibly think of. All right, let's get this work. You're listening to the PJF podcast, a show dedicated to decoding elite sports performance and fitness. I'm Paul Favorites, and I'm an NBA strength and conditioning and performance trainer. If you want to become superhuman, take your fitness, and take your sports performance to the next level, this is the podcast for you. Let's do it. Let me intro you the right way. My guy, Ramsey Nijem, Dr. Ramsey Nijem. It sounds good. Youngest strength coach in the NBA. Is that correct?
Youngest head strength coach.
Youngest head strength coach in the NBA.
Yeah.
Doing big things for the Sacramento Kings. Well respected by all the other strength coaches in the NBA and on the independent side as well. Doing really good things. I think there's a lot that we can learn from him. So I actually mentioned you on our last episode about the Bay Area Sports Symposium, killing that, bringing together a bunch of strength coaches. So Ramsey's just doing a lot of big things in the field. So it's a blessing to have you here, my man.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you for coming up last week to
yes, sir.
Show some love and drop some knowledge. I thought that stuff was awesome, man.
Always.
We brought it in there. That was fun. I mean, everybody brought it. Like,
right.
Presenters killed it. The attendees were like just hyped, like every part of it. So still riding a high on that, and now I'm in here, and now I'm more hyped right now.
Yes, sir. So okay, first of all, how do you become the NBA's youngest strength coach? Like, take us through
that journey.
How did you get there?
Yeah, I don't actually know if there's a path, but I can share mine, and maybe there's something there. Super fortunate. Like, whenever I tell, like, my story is, like, first and foremost, super fortunate. Did not get here alone. A few people took chances on me when I was relatively young in the field, and I guess with age. And that just, like, turned into what it is now. But started my career at UC Santa Barbara, and that's where I did my undergrad. And so it actually started like hoop. So I'm kind of like one of those basketball strength coaches with the hoop background. I don't want no problems, though. Like, chill out over there.
Not like that.
Nah.
Okay.
So it started kind of through my undergrad. I tried to walk on the team. That didn't work out. But the coaches saw something and said, hey, if you want to, like, try to play D2, we could make some calls. There's some schools that definitely could use you and you could play. And at that time, I actually called my older brother. I'm like, yo, I'm thinking about transferring to a different school. It was a good school, too, to play ball. And, like, mom would be okay with it because it's going to be a really good degree still. And he's like, yo, why don't you just become a personal trainer? I'm like, what the heck? The hell is a personal trainer? Like, I don't know. I didn't even know strength coach was a job at this time. This was like 19 years old, fresh out of high school.
Right.
And he's like, yeah, man, you just take a test and, like, you're good at tests, so go do that. I'm like, all right. So I still remember, like, I don't think I've ever shared this story. The way I started in the field was I had an old, like, gold necklace that had some diamonds on it. And so I took that down to a pawn shop because to get a certification, it costs money, obviously.
Yeah.
So I needed about $800 to get my first certification. And I took this chain down to a pawn shop, and I'm like, yo, how much would you give me for this? He was like, well, we don't need the diamonds, but we'll melt the gold down. We'll give you $800. I said, done deal. So I traded in this gold chain, got the $800, ended up getting my first certification. And that's when it took off because I read an entire textbook like in 10 days. And I'm like, damn, like, this must be something of interest if I'm that fascinated to read this in 10 days. So took my first test, returned to UC Santa Barbara my second year, walked into the athletic department and said, hey, I want an internship. And they didn't have student interns at the time. Sent them a resume. They never got back. And where the facility was located was in between my house and campus. So it was like the edge of campus into the community. And so I walked by there every single day. And so every like couple of days I would just pop right back in and say, hey, like just following up. I think eventually they realized there was 2 options that they had: say no or say yeah. But either way, I was going to keep showing up.
Right.
And so the gentleman that ended up kind of telling me to sit down and chat with him, his name is Jeremy Bettle, Dr. Jeremy Bettle. He's now with the Anaheim Ducks, so local to this area. Yep. He was at UC Santa Barbara as the associate AD, head strength and conditioning coach, and he was like, yo, kid, what do you want? And I said, well, I'm a basketball guy. I would love to become an NBA strength coach. And I remember he looked back at me like dead in my eye and said, I will be an NBA strength coach. And I just remember that confidence that he had. And he was young, too, at the time, maybe 29, 30-ish at the time. Okay. And I just remember that confidence. I'm like, damn, you got to have confidence to get these roles.
Right.
And so you fast forward a few months, he brought me on. I did an internship for a few months. Did a good enough job there for him to give me a call that summer. So now this is like between second and third year. And said, hey, we're going to start a student role here. Do you want it? I said, hell yeah, like sign me up. So I ended up in my third year, which for me was my senior year because I graduated from UC Santa Barbara in 3 years.
Okay. And
so that whole third year or final year, I was a part-time coach. I would coach 20 hours a week or so. And then I was taking like 18 units on a quarter system. Like it was crazy. And this is something we've talked about before. Like what is grind? Everyone's like, oh, I grind. I'm
right.
Like, all right, like grind got to be a little different.
There's levels to it. There's levels to this grind.
There's some levels. Like if you work the 9 to 5, like, and you got time to watch every Game of Thrones, like right. I don't know. Like exactly. I don't know what your grind is.
Exactly.
And I'm not knocking it. Like that stuff is valuable to people. Mm-hmm. But I think ultimately, like if the question is how do you get to become like the youngest NBA strength coach, it probably doesn't have a lot of Netflix involved.
Facts.
You know what I mean? So
big facts.
So from there, that turned into then I went on to get my master's degree, Cal State Fullerton, local to here again, Center for Sport Performance, a lot of really good talent there. Did that in a year. So same thing. I walked in there and I'm like, yo, my advisor, Dr. Jared Coburn, I said, Dr. Coburn, what do I got to do to graduate in a year? He's like, well, you can't graduate in a year. I said, no. I'm not asking if other people have done it. I'm asking you, like, mathematically, what does the units got to be? And he's like, well, I guess if you did this, this, and this. I said, all right, well, let's do this, this, and this. So let's sign that up. So did that in a year, returned to Santa Barbara City College now. This was 22. So fresh off the master's, 22 at Santa Barbara City College. Started a strength and conditioning program there. 17 teams, like exponential growth. We had an outdoor weight room. So for the listeners, like if you just Google Santa Barbara City College Stadium, you'll see a stadium that's literally on the beach. Like it's the most ridiculous thing.
Really?
And I was 22, like, yo, we got an outdoor weight room.
It doesn't rain. It's outdoor, like it's got it, like it's outdoor.
Outdoor, like no roof.
You don't got a cover?
No cover.
What?
No cover. Like a chain fence around like a rogue setup, which is like 6 racks.
Yeah.
We had a shed. We had some turf. And all the weights and bars and everything were in the shed. So I came in the morning, I opened the fence up, and my first team, I'm like, yo, this is what we got, pull it out. And like athletes are in the shed, pulling out bars, pulling out benches, setting them up, like whatever you got to get.
That's crazy.
It was crazy. And it doesn't rain in Santa Barbara. We got rained out, quote unquote, twice. One of those times it was really raining. The other time it was like sprinkling, and I would have, whatever. We didn't have cleans on that day, so it's not like the bars are going to slip.
Right.
The coach called that one, so did that for a year, and we had a football team, so more exponential growth in that. And then 23, when I was 23, Sacramento Kings called. And so that connection came from when at UC Santa Barbara, Jeremy Bettle took off to the Brooklyn Nets. The same guy who looked me in my eye and said, I'm going to be an NBA strength coach. Well, it only took him a few months to get there. Became an NBA strength coach for the Brooklyn Nets. He moved on to the Toronto Maple Leafs, and now he's with the Anaheim Ducks. The guy that replaced him was Dr. Chip Schaefer, who just happened to actually have a connection to the school with his son who had graduated. So his son went to UCSB, had just graduated. Chip Schaefer is Phil Jackson's right-hand guy. So
he was with all those Bulls teams?
All of them, yeah. I mean, 13 finals appearances, 11 rings. Was the head athletic trainer for the Bulls in the 90s. And then when Phil went to the Lakers, early 2000s, he went with them. So he got 6 rings with Jordan. He got 5 rings with Kobe.
Wow.
Got 11. Yeah.
So he might be the GOAT.
He might be the GOAT.
He might have the most rings out of anybody.
Yeah. Like
other than Phil.
Yeah. I mean, definitely GOAT. Strength coach titles. He got 11 of them.
That's crazy.
So met him and really just started a relationship with him by bugging him with the same like questions that you would expect someone to ask, which are like, yo, who's better, Kobe or Jordan? Like anyone who worked with Phil Jackson, like, like, come on, Chip, keep it real. Who's better? And he would never answer it like specifically.
Oh man, I need the answer to that.
But would ask him those questions, and those questions turned into like family questions, and then those questions turned into like strength and conditioning questions. And so our relationship grew to a point where he really trusted me and actually wanted to like really help in my career. So he ends up getting the job with the Sacramento Kings and calls me, and this is really 2013. And by the time they bring me on, it's 2014. So my first season in the NBA was 2014-15, and now entering year 6. And then kind of throughout that time, I spent some time at a place called P3 in Santa Barbara. When I was at Santa Barbara City College, I also worked at P3 in Santa Barbara. And like I always tell people, even though it happened fast, like by the age 23, I was an assistant, did that for 2 years, and by 25, they named me head. So even though it happened fast, it actually like there were 2 other times when I thought I was going to the NBA and they fell through. And so by the time the second one fell through, I was like, yo, it's whatever. When it happens, it happens. So the first time was I landed an internship with the Warriors in 2012. And they called me. They're like, yo, you killed it. And I remember like I was super nervous. I didn't sleep that night because I was 21. And it was like a real interview. We walked into like a boardroom with all the glass windows and like people in marketing looking at you. And I'm like nervous. I got some clothes on that probably didn't match. But I remembered the entire like Wikipedia page for Golden State Warriors because I thought the interview would be like, yo, who's our owner? And I'm like, so I did all that, and then that fell through. But they ended up calling me and placing me at a rehab facility, Aftercare Rehab, which was in Castro Valley. I don't even think it still exists, but that's Dr. Don Chu who owned that. Dr. Don Chu is like the American founder of Plyometrics, right? Mm-hmm. He brought Plyometrics to the States. Most people would probably credit him for that. And so worked with him, not really directly with him because he was doing more rehab stuff and I was doing some of the coaching stuff. And I was kind of an intern in that facility. But that was like the first, like, oh, man, like, hi, I think I'm going to the Warriors for the summer, and then fall. And then at P3, same thing. I was supposed to get placed with the Atlanta Hawks, and it was like, hi, and then that fell through, and I'm like, oh, shoots. So I'm sitting there like, man, this is never going to happen. And sure enough, like, it just kind of got going, and it happened. So, yeah, that's like the long-winded, like, that's how you make it happen, I guess.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. That's such a cool story. And you started off telling that story by you knew people, you got lucky. I don't think that's the case. I think you grinded so hard that you became so good that people can't ignore you. And that's the thing. People think that this industry is all about connections. I think you can make it big without connections, right? Because you didn't start with connections. Mm-hmm. It's not like you were in college and somebody just came and found you and was like, hey, are you interested in being a strength coach? No, you were so interested in it, so passionate about it. You had the grind and the work ethic. And when people see that, people higher up who also have that work ethic, you could spot them out. Mm-hmm. Like I go through this hiring process now and I get hundreds of resumes, emails, people coming in, and I can spot out the ones that got that it factor. And I think those people saw that it factor in you. And then once you see that, you're willing to go to bat for people, right? But nobody's like looking to just like do favors, right? What's a favor? They're putting their name behind you for a reason because they believe in you.
Yeah, no, for sure. I don't think there's a right way to even get it in strength and conditioning. I mean, everyone takes the same like undergrad degree, CSCS probably, unpaid internships, and like that is a route, and that's a route for some people, and for most people that's probably the easiest route. But it's not the only way. Like your case in point, like we kind of talked about it last week. We spent some time together. Like you're an example of like you can get it however you got to get it. You just got to be willing to put the grind in. And like we've kind of talked before about that, and I know some of your story, and it's like, yo, that's different. Like that grind is different, and but if you're passionate and you're hungry and you're willing to do it, like the world is out there for you.
Right. Yeah, that's dope. So, okay, you get in with the Kings and then you decide to go for your Doctor of Science, right? Mm-hmm. So how do you balance that grind? Well, first of all, do you think that was a necessary step, or was that something that you just kind of looked at like on the competitive side, I want to get that, or did you want to get that because you really wanted to learn that information, or is it that important for teams?
Yeah, I think it's probably a mix of all three of like what you just said. part of it was I was done with my master's at like 22. And so at that point, it was just like, yo, you're 22. You might as well finish this journey. And I like strength and conditioning, but I don't necessarily like school. And like that's what I always tell people. Like I went through everything fast because I wanted to get it done. It's like running a mile. If someone says go run a mile, I hate running a mile.
Right.
Let me just run through that thing as fast as I can. I just want to be done with it.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing with school. Like I just treated it like that. It's like I'm not a huge fan of it necessarily, but I wanted to get it done. And I do think there is a lot of value in like a formal education process. You don't have to go that route. But for a lot of people, that's probably the right way to go. Mm-hmm. So yeah, like I ended up taking the doctorate on mainly because it was like, it would be stupid for me to cut myself short when I could finish this thing and be done by 26, 27.
Right.
Number 2 on that was like, I knew that ultimately a master's degree was pretty common in professional sports strength and conditioning. Mm-hmm. So it was like, okay, if you're going to be a young guy, no one's going to hand you a job when you're young.
Yeah.
So you got to set yourself apart somehow. And that became another route. Because if it wasn't going to be that, then it was just going to be, I guess, try to gain a lot of coaching experience. But you can't fast forward time. Like there's nothing I can do with time. I just have to sit around and wait. And like you can coach your ass off, but ultimately like your experience, you don't turn in a resume and say like I have 1 million hours of experience, right? Yeah. It's just like years. And you can't fast forward that. So I knew like that would be one way to, I think, like accelerate the career.
Right.
And then the knowledge side, like I was super passionate about science, but I realized that there was when I entered the master's degree, I realized that there was a gap in my ability to understand and appraise the research. And I knew for me to ultimately become the best coach that I can be and the best scientific thinker that I could be, it would take some real scientific thinking skills, some critical thinking skills, and an ability to not only appraise research, but also like apply it and understand how to use it within our setting. So
right.
I think like all of those kind of things went into the decision-making process. And I do think it helped me ultimately get the job because I was 25, and certainly part of the selling points for myself and for the person who ultimately hired me to the front office was like, yo, this guy's about to finish a dual doctorate of science degree. Like he knows what he's doing. And for better or worse, most people look at those letters and say, okay, he knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it helped.
Yeah, I think it's a good investment. I mean, if you're trying to go on the team side, I think it is a good investment because at the end of the day, somebody's got to hire you. If it's the independent side, I think it's a bad investment personally, just because the amount, I mean, with that amount of money and that amount of time, the damage you can do of just, hey, I could get access to those same books. I could study those myself, and then I could take that money and invest it in my business.
For sure.
Whether that's an online platform or whatever it is.
Yeah, I would completely agree for sure because, I mean, this is probably not the time or place, but like college debt is a real thing. And like going into that for the hope that like some letters is going to help you explode on the private side is not real.
Yeah.
So, for sure, I agree.
Definitely. Okay, so you get in and you're working for the Kings. What are some of the early challenges that you had? I mean, you're coming in as a young guy. I'm sure that probably helped you in certain areas. Do you feel like it hurt you in any areas? Was it tough to go in and get your credibility? Because I know when I first came into this industry and NBA players started trusting me while I was still a senior in college, the GMs and the agents, a lot of times they would look at it and be like, well, this guy's so young. What could he know? So I kind of struggled getting credibility when I was 23, 24. Yeah. Did you have that same problem?
I think early on, only a little bit, and mainly because that challenge was buffered by the people that brought me in. So like Chip, for example, he co-signed me, and he kind of promoted me within the organization, so that helped. Some of the early challenges, though, were like within the NBA, and I love it about NBA players. They don't trust you outright. Like you have to earn that.
Yeah.
And so early on, and I got that from people. A lot of people kind of said, hey, like, you're a basketball guy, so you'll like the job, but it's going to take you time to build relationships because these guys don't trust people. And now being in it, I see why. Like, there's so much that gets thrown at them, and you know just as well as everybody, like, NBA players, I love the game. I think it's blowing up in part because there's only 5 on the court at one time, and they can be seen, which means that they're fully marketable. Well, with marketability comes a lot of opportunities, which comes agents and managers and all these things. And so they just don't trust people.
Right.
And so early on, I kind of played the sideline. And I remember early on, it was like I would just sit in the weight room and like no one would want to work with me. And I'm like, yo, come on. Like I work for the team too, you know?
Yeah.
And I remember like very distinctly, our first trip was was to China. My first road trip with the team was to China. We had some preseason games there, and it was one of those NBA Global games. And we actually played the Brooklyn Nets, where Jeremy Bettle was. So it was like full circle for my career. Like my first NBA trip was playing the strength coach who brought me in and started
dope.
Yeah, it was cool. So I have this cool picture at half court in China with me and Jeremy's on one side and Chip's on the other. And it's like, here are the two people that really accelerated my career and given me opportunities. And I'm sitting in a country that I would never even have a chance to be in with these guys. So,
yeah.
But I remember the day that I realized how important relationships are. Up until that point, no one went out of their way to really work with me. They would work with me because I would sneak in and just like throw in cues, but it was really like Chip who had to lead it.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember we ended up actually going out as like a support staff separately, but we ran into players. And usually we try to avoid those situations. But in China, there was one English kind of club nearby. So everyone's kind of ended up there. And I remember like after that night, just having some kind of casual interactions with players and like them getting to know you. Like you're not talking about strength and conditioning, you're not talking basketball. The very next day, I had two players knocking on my door like, "Yo, let's get this working." And they didn't even have my number at that point. And I'm like, "Yo, that's crazy."
That is crazy.
And from that moment, I'm like, "Yo, once they trust you though, it's over."
It's over.
And so the early challenge was gaining trust. And then after I got through some of that, and then there was some age barrier stuff with like people just kind of thinking like, oh, you're just a young guy, you don't know. Not the players, just other people. But once you get past that, by the time I spent 2 years as the assistant, credibility was there. So even though I was a young head strength coach, I had been in the system. Players knew me, front office knew me. So credibility was there. But early on, it was definitely the trust stuff.
Yeah. That's the case for everybody. I mean, the only way you get the buy-in is when they start to get that connection with you.
Mm-hmm. Athletes don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
That's where it's at. And I think that's what a lot of coaches are missing. Like I know a lot of coaches who are really good on the science side. Like they're very, very, very smart, but their results aren't there. And it's like, what's the missing link? And it's because their athletes don't truly buy in to what they're preaching.
For sure.
So that's something that I've noticed with you is just how good you are with relationships, and that's huge. It's got to also help that you're probably stronger than a lot of these guys. Weight room numbers, you're probably stronger than your whole team, right?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I hope.
In the squat, at least.
Yeah.
I know in the squat, because they don't got the anthropometrics to squat like that.
Exactly. That's a nice way to say it. I guess the other way to say it is I'm short arms. So
you're built for the squat.
Yeah. And I think it helps a lot with buying, not just because like I'm stronger than them, because most of them, they wouldn't know like my powerlifting total. Mm-hmm. But without like, because of my absolute strength numbers, right, which are compared to powerlifters terrible, but within NBA, right, they're
huge.
Yeah. That means I don't really need to warm up to do some of the sets they're doing.
Yeah.
Which means that within my coaching, when I'm cueing or just talking kind of shit and rapping with them, and like I can just grab the dumbbells, like they got 80s, or I don't need to warm up for the 80s, so I grab them and just rep them out and talk. And that created like, oh, damn, okay. And now they want to work a little bit harder because you gassed it up.
Exactly.
So yeah, it definitely helps just being able to like jump into the sessions with them. And like I always talk about, like, you got to get sweaty in your coaching sessions. Like, we're not coaching from the sideline. We at the goal line with them, and I think they appreciate that and see it.
Right.
Those
are the best when you can jump in and demo. Like, I'll demo like a trap bar jump, and we'll be measuring it, and somebody will hit like a 20, and another athlete will get in, hit a 21, and then I go in, I just give coaching cues, and I demo, I'll hit like a 24.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, yeah, like that. And they're like, wait, you just hit a 24?
Oh, for sure.
Without a warm-up?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of those things that you just get that extra buy-in for sure.
And I've seen it just through your Instagram, like the way you're able to move in demo.
Yeah.
Players see it, and it's like, okay.
Right.
Players have to be able to see a good demo. Like we tell our interns all the time, like practice your movement, because some people just want to see it. Like some people don't want the cues, and they don't want it, like, show them.
Oh, and the higher level of an athlete you are, the better you are at just watching and picking up on it. Mm-hmm. And as you get good at that, you start to get away from listening. Mm-hmm. You don't hear the words because you're so good at just watching what people do, and you can mimic that. So if we give the perfect verbal cues, at the end of the day, all that matters is how we actually demo it.
For sure.
So it's funny to watch, like, sometimes I'll watch like an intern demo it, and then I'll watch somebody who really knows how to do it, and they demo it, and the athlete all of a sudden figures it out.
Yep.
So that's a big part of it.
And I think, I mean, not to cut you off, Paul, but I also think like along those same lines, athletes want to be athletes, and good athletes will be good athletes.
Yeah.
So sometimes cueing them into like our biomechanical models that we think are important for movement or sprinting or jumping, it's like sometimes you just got to jump how you jump. They see it. Okay, cool. I'm going to jump. And they may have a different flavor to it, but they're world-class athletes. That's that's okay sometimes. And I think a lot, like we do some technical stuff on the sprint side, and we'll try to like cue and clean up movement. But you watch like you watch De'Aaron Fox on a turnover, and like everything that we could have cued, he just did because he was just trying to get to the other side faster than everyone else. Right. And he does. But like, you're like, oh gosh, maybe I should shut up at times and let them move.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, I mean, for me, like, I always go by the rule of if I could teach it without saying words, I'm going to do it. I'm going to use words as my last resort. So I'm going to teach it. If they can't do it just by watching, then I might use 5 words. Now, if they don't get it, now I might use 10 words, and I'm going to gradually go up, but I'm not going to go in right away and break down the science and break down the biomechanics, because the more you think, the slower your feet get. Like, the worst thing we could do is take that natural De'Aaron Fox and make him into a thinker. Right?
For sure.
You're probably only going to slow a guy like that down.
For sure.
Okay, so how important is it for you, because you guys got a lot of young guys, so I think it's probably a little bit different for you because you're probably building them from the ground up, especially a lot of your guys one and done, so their training age is actually very low. So what are sort of your priorities when you get one of these guys year 1, year 2? Is there any like meat and potatoes that you got to see out of them?
Yeah, I mean, we don't necessarily have like thresholds of like, you know, some coaches out there will have like this criteria-based like milestone marker of progression that players have to meet for them to like get through these levels of their strength and conditioning program. Like, I don't buy into that stuff. I think ultimately like it's good for some athletes and it actually holds other athletes back. When we first get guys, I mean, we just teach them through our movement profiles that we want to see. Like we want to see you squat how we think you should squat, hinge how we want you to hinge, trap bar deadlift, which could be like a squat or a hinge depending on who wants to argue about that stuff. But basically, can you squat, can you hinge, could you push, can you pull, and can you control the pelvis, which is like our trunk stuff? Can you do all of those things in the ways that we want to see it done? And if so, great, let's move through our teaching progressions faster, and then we can start adding load and start adding velocity and then changing constraints and doing all of that. So yeah, like when we get guys, we just take them through like our movement categories that we think are important, and then some guys accelerate fast and you're like, oh wow, you didn't have a training history, but you have the levers to or the mobility or the stability or the general strength qualities to squat good right now. All right, well, let's just focus on adding some load to that. Let's focus on adding some speed, maybe get into some combinated resistance stuff. So we got more flexibility in our progressions there. And other people, like based on a million other things, just can't squat for anything. Okay, well, you're going to spend a little bit more time doing our regressions, and we're going to spend a little bit more time fixing and cleaning that up. So
these guys with the anthropometrics, I mean, the guys with the crazy long femurs, the short torsos, are you going to try to get them to back squat, or are you going to kind of mess with body weight squats, goblet squats, and just see, like, do you have a certain progression for those type of guys?
Yeah, I mean, most people follow through the same, I guess, movement progression, because we ultimately want to see most people be able to squat a good amount of weight, which a bar on the back is a nice way to do it. A bar on the front squat is a nice way to do it. A safety bar is a nice way to do it. So we don't get hung up on the implement much. But yeah, first we're going to check body weight, and most guys can't body weight squat very well at all based on what you just said and ankle mobility restrictions. I'm okay with using a wedge or weightlifting shoes.
Yeah, me too.
Some people are like, you should, like, whatever. Like, it cleans up the movement. It makes it trainable, and now we can load it. Like, and are we in here to be movement coaches, or are we in here to load from a physiological, like, people can argue all day on what good movement should be. I don't know the answer to it, but if it looks like there's a bandwidth of what it should probably look like, and if you fit within our bandwidth, and now your individual anthropometrics are playing a role, or your individual movement variability is playing a role. If you fit within our bandwidth, we just want to be able to load it. Can you control it? Can we change speed? So from a movement progression side, we'll like to use a goblet squat because it gives them a counterbalance. It lets them sit back. A goblet squat, especially with a lift, if you have that ankle restriction or weightlifting shoes, is a nice way to get it.
It's funny, the goblet squat is easier than the body weight squat. You get that counterbalance.
Yeah, for sure. And most guys don't have the mobility, so load helps them. get into the ranges that we want.
Right. Yeah. No, I love elevating the heels. What Corey was talking about on whatever episode he was on, he was talking about, like, are we really going to limit loading all of these structures just because one structure isn't up to speed? So the ankles, they're not quite mobile enough. Well, now we can't get proper loading through the knees and the hips, all because of the ankles. So why not just elevate the heels? Like, let's just train the structure. And sometimes the ankles actually do loosen up a little bit because now you got them down in deeper positions. You're building strength in those lower positions.
For sure. And I love that. Shout out Corey. Like, I love that. Like, why would we limit all the other structures because of one?
Right.
Now, just because you use a lift, like, you should still probably work on the ankles, but you can do that a million different ways, right? So you shouldn't necessarily limit your entire movement library or your loading potential because one joint. Like, okay, let's bypass that with a lift, and now let's work on that separately. Or, like you just said, loading an ankle into end range is probably good for an ankle.
Right.
Like, that's how you create mobility.
Right. Exactly. So with these guys, so what I've always noticed is, like, even guys that can't squat well, there's always some type of squat that they can do well. So, like, we'll usually go to a rear foot elevated. Man, I'll get them supported. I'll let them hold on to a TRX or hold on to the power rack. And get into a rear foot elevated. I've almost never seen somebody be able to mess up a rear foot elevated. Is that something that you guys get into, or I've noticed that you guys have that platform, right? Do you guys have the West Side platform?
No.
You got the belt squat.
We have the belt squat.
Okay.
Yeah, the Kaiser belt squat.
Yeah. So you guys will do, like, some split stance stuff on there, right?
Yeah, we'll play around with that. And we're a huge fan of kind of rear foot elevated split squats. It's probably, like, our last progression on our, like, lunge progression. So, like, it's split stance or split squats first, and then, like, some reverse lunges then, and then truly unilateral, or as close to unilateral, I guess, one progression removed, because I guess a true unilateral could be like a box step up or a step down. We do like a almost like a foot supported step down to get us into deep ranges, or like a pistol. But yeah, rear foot elevated, like, big fan for sure. And another way to get into the ankles, it's pretty dang safe, like, from a stability perspective.
Yeah,
like, guys,
very safe.
Yeah, guys can find stability, especially if you start doing what you just talked about, hand support and that type of stuff. And now you just got one leg. Like, let's just go up and down.
Right.
Let's make it happen. Like, so for sure.
My only thing, like, with rear foot elevated, it's hard to get a true max intent when you're, like, at least, like, barbell or dumbbell, because guys aren't going to go 100% because they know they are on one leg.
Yeah.
They might give you 85, 90% of their pure max intent, but, like, when you start getting into supported, like, why not hold on to something? And then strength coaches will be like, well, you're limiting their balance. Well, when we have 200 pounds on our back, is that a time to work on balance? Probably not.
Facts.
Like, there's other times that we should be working on balance. Right now, we're trying to load. So
for sure.
That's why I've moved. Every year, I think I've moved more and more into supported rear foot elevated stuff. And then I was telling you, I got the Jones machine.
Yeah.
And it's got that lateral support. So now you can get a max intent and you feel a little safer.
Yeah.
Okay, so how much jumping can you guys get into? I know it's so much different because you got your guys mostly in season. I get them off season, and so I get to do a lot more, like, plyometric type progressions. Do you get any type of jump work in? And if so, when in the season are you doing that?
Yeah, in season is tough because the volume's like 82 games in 6 months, 3.5 games on average per week. So our high minute guys aren't doing any jumping with us, unless we use force plates as one of our readiness measures, unless we're starting to see some dips in certain variables, and then it's like, okay, maybe we need to dose, like, max intent jumps just to kind of stimulate the system. But in season, jumping is not part of our program for our high minute guys. Now, the guys at the end of the bench, they're not getting equal amounts of jumping because they're not playing. In the NBA, you don't practice much because you play every other day and then you travel. So a lot of practice. It's very rare that you have, like, real hard practices where you'll get, like, max intent jumps. So our low minute guys, we are dosing them with some jumps for sure, and some acceleration work. Like, our high minute guys wouldn't be getting that sprint stuff either, but we want to definitely dose those things because we want to. I always just think, like, floor and a ceiling. Like, I want to maintain a floor and a ceiling with our max effort, intent, jumping, and sprinting, and really all of our qualities. Like, the floor would be, like, what's the minimum amount that someone's getting or someone should be getting to maintain that quality? And if you're a high minute guy, you're getting enough of that in the game. So you're definitely above the floor. And the ceiling is like too much, right? So like 4 games in a week is a lot. And so if we start adding jumps to that, well, that's probably above the ceiling.
For sure.
So we try to keep guys in this range of floor to ceiling, and then just based on what you're getting in practices or games, do we need to add some stimuli in the jumping or the sprinting to get you above that floor? Or for our high minute guys, like, do we need to have conversations with people about pulling you back a little bit to keep you above or below that ceiling? That's kind of like our safe range, quote unquote. And I don't even know, I couldn't quantify that for you. So it's more of, I guess, a feel. I mean, I could come up with crazy numbers and like convince other people, but our industry has moved so much into like thinking we know everything that now I'm just like, yo, let's just be strength coaches and have the feel.
Right. For sure. Yeah. So, yeah, one thing that I mean, and I don't have to deal with in season, so it's a lot different. But like what I'm looking at with our guys on the court, like today we're watching Buddy. What I'm looking at is, what do you get to? Because basketball players are going to take the path of least resistance. So there's a lot of players that they're going to go off their left every time. When they're planting 2 foot, they're going to plant right left every time. And so then I'm going in and I'm saying, how can I balance that?
Yeah.
Because nobody jumps equally off left and right. Nobody jumps equally off those plants.
Right.
And so I'm looking, okay, how can we balance that? Because one of the things that was an eye opener for me was when I started working with more pro dunkers. And these pro dunkers who don't do this high level training, they just dunk every day. And you see the imbalances. And it's like you're a right left jumper, that left leg or that right leg is jacked, like hypertrophied quads, glutes. The left leg is tiny. And so if you jump a certain way, you develop these huge imbalances. And then we know in injury prevention how bad a huge imbalance is, right? And so for me in the off season, I'm looking at what type of jumper you are, and then I'm going to add in jumps that are the opposite. And it is tough. Like in season, I don't know if you can do any because it's still total load to the knees. So I don't know how much you can get, but for me, I think that's because there's still a lot of like off season coaches who will say, oh, well, in skills training, they get enough jumping. We can't do any more. I'm saying if you're letting them get all their jumping on the court, you're building more and more and more imbalances.
Because they're going to find their preferred patterns like you just talked about.
Path of least resistance for all these players. Like basketball players hate doing what they're bad at, right? Like if you're bad at a left-right plant, you're never going to get off that because we hate that feeling of trying to jump high and not being able to. For sure.
Well, especially in either competition or in your player development sessions, like you're trying to get better.
Right.
So you're not going to spend a lot of time on stuff that doesn't feel right because ultimately you're probably not going to go to that in a game anyways. So no, I really like that, like starting to really do more for that opposite side to create some balance or symmetry there.
Right.
I like that.
Yep. Okay, so we're talking about in-season training. You have some interesting opinions. What you were mentioning at the conference, that first day at the dinner was really interesting and eye-opening for me. You're talking about how you value game day. So a lot of other strength coaches are looking at it and saying, we're staying away from game day. We're going to get our hard session the next day or whenever it is. And you actually like to value that game day as a tough session, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. To me, like especially in the NBA, like college systems are a little bit different. But in the NBA, because you have 82 guaranteed work sessions, like the regular season's 82 games, that's 82 times your high minute guys got to play 30 to 35 minutes. So where I've started to migrate more toward now is like this micro dose on game day, ideally even within like the game hours. So like if we can create 82 work sessions that are only like 5 hours long, which would be like your 2 hours before the game and then like 3 hours or so through a game. Now we just got 82 work sessions that are 5 hours long. And now all the other time could actually be used for recovery. So often what you get is people look at game day and it's like, well, we can't work on game day because we don't want you to be fatigued. Or certain players don't like to do those things. And now, now we got to lift on the practice days or the next day. Well, in the NBA, because you play every other day, if you don't lift on game days, then you got to lift on the other day, which means that every day has now become a work day.
Right.
And so you tie that in with like the logistics of travel and other stresses. And we talked earlier about like how much comes at NBA players. They got events, they got community events, they got their personal branding stuff. There's a lot going on. And so if we create every single day as a work day, I think that's pretty tough on their body. And we start talking about arousal and stress and that stuff. Like you're just riding the high the whole time.
Yeah.
I just don't think that that's good. Now, some people are getting away with it. But I moved all the way to the other side. It's like, yo, can we just create like first let's just start with one day. Like one day is a work day. That means the next day is a recovery day. And now can we even create that one day as literally like 5 hours of work? Because if you can do that, your morning on game days become actually pretty good recovery opportunities. Like, yeah, you got to get up and do shoot arounds. But a lot of teams are even moving away from some of that stuff. So now you start talking about, dang, you can recover almost every day except for 5 hours on game day.
Yeah.
And then you bring in like the mental side of arousal.
Yes.
Because the output of a lift on a practice day versus a game day, like we see that. Like there's a difference there because on practice days, your high minute guys are tired or fatigued, or your low minute guys, they're upset that they're not playing, and they probably have a hard player development session because they're not playing. So they just don't want to get up and go for the lift. Whereas if I have you lift at 4:35 for a 7 p.m. tip, well, the music's on because you're in game day mode. Like it's go time anyways.
Right.
So now you just got to bounce to you. And guys that come in the weight room like, let's get it game day. It's a bounce to them. And it's like, man, let's take advantage of that.
Yeah.
Let's take advantage of every part of that and then shut it down every other time.
Yeah. That's brilliant. Yeah, I think people underestimate that psychological arousal, even of the bench players. Because I had a conversation with one of our guys who he doesn't get very many minutes, and I'm like, what does it feel like on game day afterwards? And he's like, dude, I can't come down until 3 a.m.
Yeah.
Like even though he's not playing, because you're still in this arena with all these fans, and you might be pissed off. You might be wondering why you can't be out on the court.
Yep.
Whatever it is, those psychological stressors have you aroused.
Oh, yeah.
So then to wake up the next morning and put in your hard session, that becomes very difficult.
For sure.
So I think it does make a lot of sense to kind of make sure that game day is that training day, and then the next day, whatever you want to get, like if you can come in a microdose or whatever, but that may not be the best day to go hard.
For sure. Especially because if you're not playing, you also got to get the supplemental conditioning stuff.
Oh, yeah. And
so
does that happen after the game?
It can. With our guys, you'll go, our general rule is you just have to give us that extra conditioning before the next basketball activity. So if you want to get it done after the game, knock it out. Some guys do that. Some guys are pissed that they don't play, so they just want to shower and get out.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Like I can understand why that is. So the next morning before practice, you just owe it to us. And some guys, we start to have these honest conversations of like, look, man, you ain't been in the rotation for 2 weeks. Instead of like waiting to get it done to, either later tonight or tomorrow morning, we can start knocking it out on game day. And so when they come in for their shoot arounds, we got guys that just knock it out real quick. And now they're just always, their game day is their game day. Like you're going to do your conditioning and your lifting just like everybody else. The minute guys, the rotation guys are getting their condition from the games, and the non-rotation guys are getting it before games. So yeah, as long as they're getting it done, and same idea here, like floor and ceiling, as long as we're keeping your conditioning within a floor and a ceiling, which with the non-rotation guys is just making sure that they're always above the floor, because we never would want you to go too low on kind of this conditioning floor ceiling concept, and now your starting point guard gets hurt, knock on wood, and the backup point guard becomes a starter, and now your third string player who hasn't been playing and hasn't been conditioning is now about to get 18 to 20 minutes.
Right.
Is he ready for that?
Right.
And that's our ultimate goal. Like our goal is to make sure it's not necessarily to like make you the most conditioned player on the team. It's simply, if a coach puts you in a game, can you perform and not be tired? And if you can, then we've maintained that floor and the coach is happy with us. Right. And you're happy because if you haven't played, when you get checked into a game, like there's some nerves there and there's some real
usually
pressure.
When you're the most gassed is like that first 2 minutes.
Yeah, that anxiety.
Yeah.
So it's like I start to sell it to them. Like, look, if you want to break the rotation, coach is going to give you a shot. I don't know when. And sometimes I do know. Like sometimes I'll have the conversations with coach. Like, coach, let's have that real conversation. He lets me know. I say, all right, cool. Can I say this to the player? Yep, cool. So now I have that. Hey, yo, on this game, you're gonna get a chance. Meaning, coach is gonna put you in the game. Now, what happens from there is on like game tactics and all that. But when you get into that game, are you gonna be tired or are you gonna perform? And if you perform, well, you just earned yourself more minutes. And over time, that's how players who like we had a player, Garrett Temple, and for us now with Brooklyn, love his story. But he's a guy who like was just trying to crack rotations and then became like a starter. And now it's like with the Brooklyn Nets, like, but as a real player. And he did that by staying ready. So I always tell my guys, like, stay ready so you ain't got to get ready.
Right.
And so the conditioning is part of that.
100%. And so when you're getting them in towards preseason, we've talked about this before, but I think you mentioned you guys kind of started like trying to plan pickup games a little bit. And so like, what I've always said is if you're going from just training and not playing at all to all of a sudden you're in training camp where you're playing and getting up every single day, that's where you're going to build overuse injuries.
Oh, yeah.
Like the weight room can only prepare us so much for actual basketball.
Yep.
And so guys develop all these overuse injuries, and then those turn into serious injuries later down the line because, like you said, you're playing 82 games, you're playing back-to-backs. You don't have time to heal these little overuse injuries that you built in training camp.
Yep.
And so you were mentioning you're actually kind of trying to program so that these guys ramp up the right way in their pickup games.
Yeah, for sure. And like, it's probably the coffee, but my mind is on this like floor to ceiling concept still.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
It's the same exact idea with pickup. So our conditioning plan leading into training camp is dosed throughout the entire offseason, but then it slowly starts to ramp as we get about 10 weeks away from camp, which works out nice because in the NBA, that's about when really like 8 weeks, right? August is when guys really start to play their pickup.
Yeah.
And they'll get hopefully 4, maybe even 6 weeks of good pickup before they return to their camp. And so same idea, like early in the offseason, if you think like May and June, like the floor and the ceiling for conditioning is relatively low. Like we want to keep that pretty low because we don't want to interfere with our training stimuli, right? And this is probably the one chance during the season that we can actually load you and not worry about soreness from basketball. Like we don't have to fight basketball anymore through May and June. July is when Summer League picks up, and your guys that aren't playing in that stuff, your veteran players should be picking up their game now. Like it should be a little bit more than just your individual workouts. And then August comes, and it should be some games. And so what I start to think is, like, can we make this floor and ceiling kind of ramp up over time? And that way, by the time we get to camp, your floor and your ceiling, mainly your ceiling, is extremely high because we know training camp is going to be super tough. And if the ceiling is still low, well, then you're going to go over that ceiling with load. And load's this arbitrary term of just too much work basically now, excessive work. And that's the overuse injury that happens. Yeah. And like you just said, with 80, once you hit camp, it's not like we have this nice schedule where you hit camp and then it comes back down and like it weaves and like, no.
It doesn't come back.
It just goes.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've this year started a program like actually number of pickup games and really just sessions because most pickup games, right, like guys will go and they'll play like 3 to 4 games. And we understand that. So it might just be like, twice a week. And let's build that into 3 times a week. And then let's build that into 4 times a week.
Right.
Because training camp is basically 5 times a week of just basketball, go.
Yeah.
And for your veterans, that's all they'll really do. They'll do the drills. But for your younger guys, like they're getting sessions before and after. They're getting the extra shots after, and they're getting their personal development sessions before. So much basketball then. So now it's like, okay, here's where I got to be. Here's where I currently am. Let's just build this ramp slowly. So yeah, now we're like programming the pickup games is just part of the grand conditioning package for our guys.
Right. I love that. So for any like, young kids, I know there's a lot of like high school basketball players, college basketball players listening to this that are just wondering, what is that day like for an NBA player? Like think of one of you don't got to name names because I know they vary greatly on how they approach their daily habits, but what does a typical day look like for one of these young superstars?
Yeah. Game day. In the NBA, I separate days by like game day, practice day, travel day. Yeah. Game day is what's important, right? So let's just talk about game day. But in the morning, usually we'll have film kicking off about 9:45 for like 15 minutes. So 9:45 to 10 is like your film session. 10 to 11 is your shoot around. And that would move an hour forward or mainly hour forward or back based on where we're at. So like if you go to the East Coast and guys are tired, then we might just move everything up 10:45 to 11, 11 to 12. But everything else is pretty much the same. You got 9:45 to 10 film, 10 to 11 is your shoot around. 11 to 11:30 is just some extra shots if you just need to feel it. So like we talked about, Buddy earlier today. Like Buddy's a guy that got to feel his shot. He's a shooter. So 11 to 11:30 or so he's getting, and sometimes he does, like he'll stay in there till noon just shooting, just getting it right. And then you got lunch 11:30 to 12:30 or so, and then most of those guys clear out. We encourage them like get out of here, go home, take a nap. Shut it down from like 1 to 3 for you. That's probably a good nap time for the player. And then most guys are returning back in 3 hours prior to game time. So if it's a tip at 7, then guys are getting in about 4. 7:30 tip, guys are in about 7:30. And now it becomes like the lifting stuff. So last year we had some guys in like a breakfast club, and those guys were lifting before the shoot around. And that was their own decision based on like their own pregame ritual. Because as much as I have like the ideal situation of like rest and recovery and like work blocks, it's also like, yo, what do you have to do to feel good? Like this is your career, and your career takes precedent over my pretty little periodized program.
Yep.
So we had some guys in our breakfast club, and that was fun. Like guys were coming in about 9, lifting from about 9 to about 9:40, and then send them off the film. Rule number 1 in the NBA is never have a player late because of your lifting session. So I'm getting guys out. And then game day stuff is like most guys, if you're really dialed in, you'll have like a 3-hour prep for a game. Like guys are coming in and they're getting a lift in, they're getting some treatment, they're getting some film, they're getting their pregame workout. We have chefs that make their personalized meals, so they're getting a meal before the game. And then about 30 on the clock, guys are in for the film session before the game, pregame film. And that's pretty short, like 33 to about 18 on the clock. 18 is when, they come out and the fans see them and everyone goes crazy and layup lines. And then 18 minutes later, it's tip-off.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I guess the game day would look like. And then after the game, some guys will lift, some guys will get treatment, and some guys will just shower and get some food and get out. And we have some food for them as they leave. So
Okay. Is there any like non-negotiables that you guys will do for recovery, or as far as recovery, is it kind of, hey, let's ride this placebo effect, whatever you think works, let's get it?
Yeah, good question. I'm glad you brought up the placebo effect too. Like
It's huge for recovery.
Huge. And like the scientific mind is like, that's not doing anything physiologically. Well, slow down, cowboy. Like, because the mental side is real.
Yeah.
Both from like the stakes at play here. If a player feels better because they think they feel better, well, that may be the difference between 20 and 30-point game. And winning games is important. Like that's what we're here to win games. So we do play with like some of that stuff. And really it's just on guys like, hey, what makes you feel good? And then we kind of have a whole bunch of, I guess, modalities. I mean, we got the compression stuff, the Normatec stuff, the cryo stuff. So we have a cryo chamber. We got cold tub, hot tub, sauna, steam room, stim units. I'm probably missing stuff. So, yeah, there's a million things, I guess, that go into it. But if I was to have, like, it's funny, the other day, me and the rest of our staff were playing around with, like, some visuals for, like, different, I guess, like, models, and recovery was one of them. And I, like, end up drawing, I go to the whiteboard, and I'm like, here's my recovery triangle. And I'm like, okay, well, each layer has its own triangle because we're obsessed with, like, images and, like, these simple, like, cookie-cutter things. But to me, the reality is, like, recovery is sleep and nutrition.
Yeah.
And then all the other things can probably get lumped into like somewhat has evidence, somewhat doesn't, probably may help some people, probably won't. So get it how you live.
The deeper you dive into the recovery science, the more confused you get.
For sure.
And you're just like, everything contradicts each other.
Yeah,
Nothing really works outside of nutrition, sleep. And for me, that third piece of the triangle would be happiness.
Yes.
When you're a happy person, you recover so much faster.
For sure. And there's like real physiology behind that. Yeah. Right? Like, for sure, like meditation, like I'm not great at it, but I definitely see huge value in it, especially for like the NBA guy that has all that stuff going on in their life. Like, how do you calm that system down? Yeah. Right. And how do you create some happiness? Because overall stress is going to create arousal, and arousal is going to interfere with recovery. Yeah. So for sure, like happy, and like that's part of I think our job as the support staff is like, how do we create some barrier between the life you have outside of basketball that is oftentimes a lot of stuff going on, the basketball pressures, and then all the stuff within the organization, right? There's training and practices and all, like, so how do we create a layer of like, can we just be like this silver lining of happiness, and every time I interact with you, can I make you smile? And that is going to play a huge role in a lot of things, including arousal or recovery, like you talked about. And you talked about it earlier too, like we kind of breezed over it, but like the player who even doesn't play is still up till 3 a.m. Yeah. Like the arousal level is there, and now with social media, you have one bad game, and like these guys, like more than I think what most people fail to realize, and you see it every day because you work with these guys, but they're so human. Like they are this, like we're all humans. We all appreciate the same things, and so these players, like they look at social media, like that's real.
What you say, that's what people don't understand,
and they care about it too.
They do.
Like even though they're on this like pedestal, and you follow them, like. Nobody likes bad energy. No. And so, like, that stuff plays into, like, their 3 a.m., you know, like.
You got to understand, the first thing they're doing is looking their name up on Twitter to see what people are saying about them. So, like, as a fan, you think that you're so far removed that anything you say is not going to be read. probably everything you say is going to be read.
For sure.
Whether it's by them or whether it's by that guy's mom or their family, because they're all searching their name.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think that's one thing that people fail to realize. And then a lot of these guys who have extra time, they have these long flights, they have, practice and then 8 hours to just chill.
Mm-hmm.
They get bored.
Yep.
So it's like, what are they doing? Well, scroll through the phone, see what people are saying about them.
I love like the critics are always like, they need to be focused on basketball. I'm like, yo, there's 24 hours a day. How much can you focus? That's crazy.
Right.
Like, I just love the space that the NBA is going into with like players now doing, I mean, LeBron kind of, I think, set the standard, but I was just reading something today with like De'Aaron Fox and some stuff that he's doing. I'm biased, obviously, he's one of our guys, but like the space that it's moving with individual NBA players really embracing their own brands and doing different things. Players are making music. Players are like great, like awesome.
Right.
Do it. As long as we talked about it earlier, as long as you're doing what you're supposed to be doing on the court or wherever in your space of work, like wherever that is, if you have other side projects and hobbies that you're passionate about, do those things because they're going to make you happier anyways, which is what we're kind of talking about.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, nobody is whole when they focus on their craft.
Right.
Just that.
I love that.
Right? Nobody.
Yeah.
And we understand that. We just don't understand that in sports.
Yeah.
Like, you understand the CEO has got to go do, like, art, or he's got to make music to unleash their full potential.
Yeah.
And be the happiest human. And when they're the happiest human, they're better at their craft.
Yep.
It's funny that we understand that with everybody except for players.
Yep.
We're like, oh, no, you just got to focus on basketball.
Oh, for sure. And they're most of these guys are young to where, like, they don't necessarily have a family. So when they go home, it's, some veteran guys go home to a family, and that might be like their release, right? But like younger guys don't, and so when they want to take on music or whatever, like, awesome, do it. You could be more than a basketball player, right? The CEO could be more than the CEO of this Fortune 500 company. Like, you can be more.
Right.
I love that, man. You said you can't be whole if you're just focused on your craft.
You can't, bro. I realize that because I'm somebody who's a grinder and I'll go all in on my craft, but I sometimes I take a step back and I'll do other things. I'll make music. I'm not that great at it. I'll make music.
Yeah.
And it just makes me a better person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Who was it? Was it man, there's some famous maybe it was Einstein, that basically he would get stuck on a problem and he would like go play the violin and it activated a certain part of his brain. He'll go back, he'll solve that problem.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So there's like little ways that you can kind of manipulate your day and become whole and become more dominant in your craft. And that's why I always tell players basketball is for life. So I'm talking about like the dude who's passionate about basketball and then goes and becomes an accountant or whatever, and they hang up the shoes.
Yep.
If you're passionate about basketball, you have to play, whether that's going out and playing or whether that's going out and getting up free throws, because that's part of you and that's your art. That's how you release your art, and that's going to make you better at your job.
Yep. Whatever your next journey is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
For sure.
So you gotta be whole.
Gotta be whole.
Got to be whole.
It's important.
Speaking of music, Marvin Bagley's got some bars.
Marvin Bagley does have some bars.
So does he lift to his own music? That's my question.
Oh man.
The answer's got to be yes.
No, actually, like he'll put his own music on, and if he has a new song and he wants to like show us, he's like, yo, you got to hear this.
Yeah.
I gas it up though. I'm like, yo man, play that. And like I'll play, we got other people on our staff that make, like, I'll play everyone's music. Like it's just showing love, like dope. Like,
oh well, and you had Shump. Shump's got bars too.
Shump's got bars.
So
I'm gonna put Shump out there. Shump, come see me about this. Shump will listen. Shump not only will lift to his own music, but Shump will rap every verse in his own music while lifted.
Oh my god!
But like,
I love it
for sure. Like it was mad energy. It was fun to be around. So yeah, we had a few.
You guys got a little music hub up there.
That was
Sac,
our
right?
last year. Our joke was like, yo, when the team mixtape coming out.
Damn, I bet Buddy's got some bars low key. I bet he's got some
Bahama vibes.
Bahama bars.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. That's funny.
Dang, I gotta send you a clip of him dancing. We gotta piece that into this or something.
Oh, I love that.
I got a clip of him dancing because Buddy, I love Buddy's energy. Like Buddy's the guy. Like
crazy.
We ended last year before every game. He's one of the guys that lifted before every game, and we ended every lift pre-game. Our lift bled into his court work, so the same song every time. And it would be like last year it was the Travis Scott and Drake song, like Out Like a Light.
Yeah.
And so I would go over to the light, and right when that hit, I would just turn the lights on and off, and we would just be dancing around and then he would run through the training room and the locker room screaming who knows what. And it's just cool, man. You just realize like these dudes are so human.
Yeah, yeah. No, I love Buddy. Buddy's like, he'll change the energy of the entire room. I don't care who you are. Like when he's in the room, the energy's all different. Like I always said, when he first started with us, he just makes like the water boy better. Mm-hmm. Like he makes me better. He makes my assistant trainer better. The water boy better. The cameraman. Like everybody's like watching his energy and how much he cares about his craft, and everybody in the gym gets better.
Contagious.
Which is rare.
Yep.
You're only going to find that in 1 out of every maybe 100 athletes that you work with.
And like in the Grant, because at times like he works too hard, quote unquote, right? And especially in the new age of NBA, workload monitoring, pull everybody back, like I love it, because you would always, like, my personal preference is give me the guys that you have to pull back before you give me the guys I got to kick in the butt.
True.
Because I can pull you back, and ultimately you're just going to work to be great.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easier to pull someone back than it is to, like, fire them up.
Oh,
like
you can't fire them up. You can fire them up temporarily. I mean, weeks at a time. But when we're talking about years, you can't fire somebody up.
For sure.
The motivation has to come internally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what's your take on, well, so like some guys genetically got it though, like Buddy's got that the genetics where he could go all day and not feel the effects to it.
Yeah.
You know, like he says he's got the island body.
Yeah.
I got that. I never knew what that meant. Like he would just outrun everybody and I'd be like, yo, how do you do that? I got that island body, bro.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, whatever that means. But
he's
like,
jacked too. Like,
yeah, he's jacked. He's just got it like that. So guys like Kobe put in 2 times more work than anybody else, but I feel like he had those genetics.
Yeah.
Another guy, if you put them on that same schedule, they're breaking down.
Yep.
So, I mean, do you kind of look at it and say like, yeah, we're all about these numbers and this workload and monitoring, but if you got it, kind of let you go a little more?
For sure. Yeah, I think it had everything within this like workload space, and like caveat, like my dissertation is in workload monitoring. So like when I'm hypercritical of it, it's coming from at least a place of like investment and research, and like, but all of that has to be balanced with the response of the individual. Yeah. And although you can measure internal response, we don't really know how well that's actually related to like breakdown, right? So like one very informative way to get that though is whether it's like a formal wellness survey, like how do you feel, and monitor that, or like a conversation, or like an energy, right? So if Buddy's a good example, if a guy's energy is always high and they're always brightening the room up and they're always bringing it, and they come in one day and they're down, well, there's your wellness survey. There's something going on there, and it may just be like, yo, that's too much for that guy. So now we'll pull that back a little bit. But yeah, I think there's probably definitely some genetics at play there on like how guys respond to too much load or spikes in load. Yeah. And there is some research on things that like moderate the ability to take on those workload spikes, or ability to just tolerate a whole lot of work, which is kind of like what we're talking about with like the Kobe's or the genetic freaks like that. But yeah, I think it just has to be balanced with like, how is that guy responding? If a dude is overly motivated and he does it every single day, then maybe he's just geared for that. And maybe what we think is too much work or excessive amounts of work is actually just not that much work for him. Right. Like, that's okay. Maybe his floor and his ceiling are just much higher than everybody else. And that's when, like, it's funny because in our space, I think we talked last week about, like, individual response a little bit, but in strength and conditioning, we always talk about, like, the human body or athletes in general don't respond to training the same way, and therefore all of their training needs to be individualized. And what we talked about last week is like, I've moved, like, I agree with that in principle, right? Like, each person, each listener, right, they would respond to a training stimulus a little bit different. And because of that, they should have a training program that's specific to their needs. Okay, that's fair and it sounds good. But what we don't really understand is like the individual response. Like, I can't actually predict how you would respond. I can predict that me and you would respond different to the same training program. I don't necessarily know how that difference shakes out. And because of that, I'm not sure on whether or not we can actually predict your response or your breakdown over time. And so when we look at these players, it's like, Some guys got it, some guys don't. Now someone that's listening is like, well, Kobe broke down. And okay, well, shoot, at some level 20 years in when you're just a GOAT, like,
yeah.
I got news. Like, you can't be the GOAT till you're 80.
No.
There's a reason why, like, Vince Carter's the only one over 40 doing it right now. Like, so, yeah, there's a max capacity that you'll reach, but, like, the timeline on that, the amounts, like, I don't know.
Right. Yeah, and that's like with our Vert code users, a lot of what I say is like, look, this is a good program that's laid out in front of you, but I got to teach you how to individualize it. Even if you were training with me in person and I got all this technology, I can't tell if you're completely fatigued or if you're good to go. Only you can tell me that. I'm never going to be inside your body. The problem is a lot of athletes don't know how to give that feedback and they don't know what to look for.
Or they're afraid. Like some players are afraid because they don't want to look weak, or if they're trying to crack the rotation, especially in this day of support staff pulling people back, like they don't want to tell us because they're afraid we'll tell the coach and now the coach won't play you, but you are already fringe minutes guy anyway. So now if we give coach a reason, like I've dealt with that. Like I pulled a player back before and he wasn't happy. Like, and he came to me straight up and was like, yo, like, I ain't really got the chance like that. Now and like we had to balance that with some of his injury history. And so like, I slept okay at night because I knew, like, yes, did it affect his minutes? And it actually affected his minutes for the next few games. Like, I had to take that. But it was balanced against a good decision-making process of, like, this guy had a injury history that we didn't want to flirt with. Like, there's risk at play for every player, and his threshold of risk that we were willing to accept was lower because of that. So
yeah. Well, that's the number one predictor of injury, right? It's just previous injury.
For sure.
Yeah. And so talking about readiness testing, you guys are big on force plate testing, and you guys do it as frequently as possible, right?
Yeah, before every game, ideally.
So I like what Max was talking about in his speech. He gave a good example of basically, if you ask your girlfriend every Friday how she's doing, you're going to get a really bad picture because Monday you forgot to take the trash out. Tuesday, you forgot to do the dishes. Wednesday, you did some. Thursday, you did some. Friday morning, you forgot to say I love you. And then you ask her Friday afternoon and she just blows up. And you look at what happened Friday. You go, oh, she gets really mad when I forget to say I love you. Well, no, it was an accumulation of all of those other things. And so if you don't check in with her every day, you paint a really bad picture.
For sure.
And that's what it is with readiness testing. We only test every now and then. We're always going to look to that last thing and say, oh, that was what put them over the edge. But really, it's this accumulation of training sessions and stress and all these other things. So, yeah, I really like that you guys get them on the plate so often and test. So you can really check in with their body. I've always said the body has a lot to tell you. You just got to check in with it.
For sure.
So
and if you don't measure it, it's hard to manage it. So, like, and within the NBA, game congestion, right? Like, you play so often that if you're not doing frequent check-ins, like, you're missing stuff. Whereas in other sports, like, if you play twice a week, well, maybe your readiness measure on Wednesday and Saturday makes a little bit more sense. But it still goes back to, like, do you have a systematic, objective process that doesn't fall you into that trap of, like, the last thing is the reason for this? Like, no, it could be a lot of things, right? Like, if you don't have a systematic process, you think that your girlfriend blows up because you didn't say you love her, but it was all those other things that you didn't account for. So like in readiness, it's the same thing. Like, are you accounting for it's really just scientific method, right? Are we controlling for every confounding variable that may explain this outcome? And if we are, then we can narrow down the result to one or two things. But if you don't do that, well, there's a million things that could be explained. And now we're like the sports scientists, like, it's because of that. Well, yeah, you forgot about X, Y, and Z that you didn't control for. So. Yeah.
That's why I always think it's funny when, a player gets hurt and then all the trainers come on Instagram and they play doctor, like, this is what happened. I'm like, you have no idea.
Oh, my goodness.
Like, you have not been with that athlete every day. It gets messy on Instagram, man. Everybody starts pointing fingers.
They got the answers, man.
Man, they all got the answers on Instagram until they're the one that's in the position of taking care of the athlete. And then something happens and they're just pointing elsewhere. Oh, well, this is what happened. The team staff, Yeah, that happens all the time. If you're an athlete who doesn't have access to a force plate, like our Vert Code members, a lot of times I'll just tell them, hey, just check your vertical, finish your warm-up, check your vertical, see where you're at. Is there any like benchmark where if they're 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch, 4 inch, 5 inches lower that you would say, hey, let's not go forward with this crazy training session?
Oh, if you don't have force plates, I'll throw out 5%, I guess.
Yeah.
Which I don't know, what is that? It's 1 inch on a 20-inch vert.
Yeah.
That sounds right. 1/20th, 5%.
That's around. Right. Yeah, I usually say like 10%.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a guess. Like nobody's done studies on these, right? Yeah. But I say 10. I just think there's some variability.
For sure.
You know,
that's actually. I mean, I guess the real answer to the question is probably understanding the individual variability.
Yeah.
Right. And then now, and like you could talk about like coefficient of variance or standard deviation. And once you understand that, when you remove outside of that, so like if your normal variation is 5%, well, 5% rule is actually terrible. So like, because now you're just within your daily physiological ranges. Like, okay, cool. So if you get to 10, now that's a better cutoff for you.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's probably based on some individual stuff for sure.
Yeah. And then on the force plates, are you kind of looking at jump height, or are you looking at peak force, concentric impulse? Like what are like the 3 things that you're looking at?
Yeah, I mean, we look at a lot of different things. And you met Anthony last week, who's our assistant strength coach who oversees kind of our force plate stuff. And I really like our approach to it, which is like every variable has a couple other variables that you have to take a look at to start to understand it.
Right.
An easy one that everyone would understand is like counter movement depth. So if all you looked at is jump height and jump height was down, well, if the athlete took a lower or higher range of motion or displacement, which is your depth, that may explain that. And now they may have done that because they're fatigued or whatever, or they may have done that because they got distracted or they just weren't thinking about it or whatever. So you probably have to look at a few different things, but jump height is definitely valuable for sure. We do all of our jumps with hands on hips, so that kind of controls for some variables. Jump height for sure, RSI or RSI mod, which is just your contraction time and flight time, a contraction time in a CMJ versus like a contact time in a depth jump. So CMJ is just when it starts, and then by the time you leave the ground, that's like the full contraction time versus like the height.
Right. Which, by the way, I think you can get that on My Jump app, can't you?
Yes.
Yeah. So if you're listening to this, you don't have force plates or anything, download My Jump app. It's like $2. And you can actually get a good RSI test, so that can be a valuable indicator for you.
Yeah, no, for sure. So, and that's like the great thing about, because I always get that question, like if you don't have force plates, what can you do? You got $2, like maybe, and if you do, like there's an app for that.
If you don't have $2, let's go get $2.
Yeah,
right. There's a
lot
lot
of
of
grind.
Yeah, let's grind. Like you can go cut somebody's grass for $2
and get that app.
Yeah,
and you can funnel athletes through and get that. I mean, I don't know. There's like jump mats and other things that are out there.
Yeah.
Technically, if you're just using flight time, which a lot of these products are, you can do it with your phone.
True.
Like if you slow mode a video and then just, because this is basically what My Jump does. So sorry, My Jump, if I'm stealing some money out your pocket. But like all you would do is film their jump flight time based on a slow motion camera and just literally take the time of when the toe leaves the ground. And then just fast forward a little bit, and then time when the toe hits the ground.
Right.
And that's your flight time.
Right.
And now you don't even necessarily know jump height, but you know flight time. And if flight time changes, well, jump height probably changed.
Yeah.
And now you could like argue with the feet stuff, but whatever. Like this is like sports scientists on a budget, right?
Yeah.
And if you have a phone and a stand or a buddy, just put it at the ground and do it. And there goes your readiness measure. And now you can start talking about like percents, 5, 10%. And now you can modify that program with. Yeah. And like program modification sometimes is like, I think you got multiple options in there. It could be as simple as like cut some sets, right? And that's like an in-session taper. Or it could be all the way to like, yo, just skip training today. Yeah. And maybe that's more relevant and important for you. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, for a lot of our guys, it's like if you're down 10, 15%, like maybe we just get a light aerobic type day. Maybe we go more of a bodybuilding session where we just get a pump, because that might actually add to your recovery, where we just go in, maybe a light circuit, 1 or 2 sets on everything, full body, get a pump, finish with a nice little jog, because these things can add to your recovery.
For sure.
Instead of anything like high intensity that's going to push you deeper and deeper, because sometimes you go in and you're a little bit overtrained and you push yourself. It could be days before you bounce back. Yep. And the other thing that I never realized until a few years ago, there's a lot of times where you have enough juice to get through, to hit your numbers, to get a good intense session, but you didn't have enough juice to recover from that session. And so sometimes that's what people aren't really accounting for, is they think it's all about getting through.
Yeah,
you could get through, but you can't recover. So that pushes you deeper and deeper into that overtrained state.
Yep. And over time, like The basketball analogies obviously are relevant because I'm on the podcast with you. But when you start to think about like performance, because ultimately, like, are you training just to like get better at training in the weight room? And if so, like, you're probably a power lifter or you're a bodybuilder. Most people aren't doing those things. Most people are training for an outcome. And in this context, basketball. So like, I used to think it was the teams that could just like train the hardest and then keep going, and those people like climb above the rest, and now they're like the peak performers and they win games and championships. And now you start to realize like it's just the players who don't drop off, right? Especially through 82. But in most environments, unless you're like the young college kid who's just trying to get better, like some people have to get up here. But once you're up here, it just becomes like war of attrition. Like, can you stay up here? And the way you stay up here is just by recovering better over time, which could be a lot of things about pulling back, kind of like what we're talking about. But it's not just like, can you get through the training session? Well, congratulations, you got through it. But little did you know, you're coming down this way.
Exactly.
And you're getting through, and you're actually just digging a hole.
Right.
So like, let's not just get through workouts. Let's actually create stimuli and adaptation, which involves recovery. Minimum effective dose stuff comes to mind, like stimulate, recover, and like slowly win the race. Or just don't fall off and let everybody else fall. Like, athletes who recover better are going to perform better chronically. So just don't fall off.
Right. I love it. Okay, speed round.
Let's get it.
It gets real stressful in these speed rounds. Who's got our time? Tom, you got our time? What was our speed round last time? 10 seconds?
10 seconds.
All right, so hold up the time for him. As soon as I hit the question, you got to start the time. If you go over 10 seconds, bad things happen.
It's a wrap?
It's a wrap, dude.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Lock it in.
you have to choose. An athlete needs to improve their vertical jump. You can't do an assessment, deadlift or squat.
Squat. Elaborate. I got that in 3 seconds.
Dang. Confident on that.
Yeah, that was quick. Squat, I mean, obviously the transferability, it looks the same, right? It passes the eye test. But then my mind immediately went to like, we get to change range of motion pretty quickly. So we get to get to specific knee angles. And you could leave the ground in a more similar like vertical position versus like if it's a deadlift, it's going to look more like a hinge. So you're going to have to extend through the hip while going up. So I think you just get more vertical force outputs.
Right.
So yeah, squat.
Okay, I like it. Number one most common error in an NBA player's diet.
Oh, shoots. Not enough protein.
Yeah.
That was quick. I'm
killing this, bro. He might set records.
Yeah, not enough protein, I would say.
Not enough protein.
Yeah.
Total daily protein.
Just total daily protein. Timing, like we can argue all day about timing, but like total, because there are a lot of calories. I thought about calories, but then calories goes into this like ugly zone of like, what kind of foods are you eating? Whereas if you say total daily protein, you're probably going to do a fair job of getting enough calories, and protein's obviously important. And there's some really cool research out there on how beneficial protein obviously is for muscles, for recovery, for feeling full, for like there's some overfeeding studies that are really cool about like what happens to body composition if you overeat protein. Like, it's just like this safe bet macro that you should just eat a whole bunch of it.
100%.
And repair tissue, recovery, right? And all that stuff. So
that's what we're constantly preaching. No, I 100% agree. Basketball players don't get it, and they usually don't know. Usually you're like, hey, how's your protein? They're like, oh, man, it's great. And then they break it down. They're like, you're like, oh, you only eat one protein meal a day.
Yeah.
That's probably not enough.
Yeah.
I would say specifically protein for breakfast, especially for like high school, college athletes, but NBA players especially, they wake up just in time for their shoot around or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And they don't have the time, so they grab like a banana and they're out.
Yeah. And when we start talking about habits, like, because it's easy, like you hit it on the head. In general, the general American diet lacks protein in breakfast. Lacks protein in general, but especially at breakfast. And it's mostly because breakfast is the only time that you really have to make a decision of sleep versus food, right?
Right.
The longer you wait to eat, the more you can sleep, and now you're rushed and you got to get to all the things you just talked about, class and practice. And so we always talk about like habits. Like, you want to be the best in the world, you want to be an all-star, you want to be whatever you said your goal was. I'm feeding that back to you with, that's your goal. You said you want to do that. It might mean you have to get up 15 minutes early. And then we try to give guys protein shakes pretty dang often. I mean, especially right when they're done with the court. And the science says like the timing of that probably isn't that relevant depending on when your last meal was.
Right.
But that's where the art of coaching comes in. I know that if I hand you 40 grams of protein right now when you walk off the court, the chances of you having that protein are extremely high. If I don't hand that to you and I wait for you to go get it, well, you might skip lunch, or you might not know what 40 grams looks like, or you may not just want to eat that because you had more carbohydrates or fats. So you're just playing the guessing game with that. So I'm like, man, here's 40 grams. And now can we get that as often as we can throughout the day?
I love that. And then the other side of that is people try to get real picky. It's like, okay, your protein's not where you need to be. And they're like, well, you just got to eat real food. I'm like, yeah, I agree. Like, that would be great. Yeah. But, hey, we're going to have to sneak in a protein shake or two. Goodness. And, like, hey, if it comes down to them having this protein bar, let's get it. Like,
completely agree.
People want to have the perfect 100%, but it's like, dude, you're not going to have your A diet.
For sure.
But we don't have to have our C diet.
Right.
Let's have our B diet.
Yeah, for sure. Like, you get athletes that are currently having like an F diet.
Yeah.
And people argue all day about what A should be. And I'm like, you are missing the boat.
Who cares? Yeah.
Like, they're not going to do A. So why don't you can go figure out A, write on a board, a whiteboard specifically. Take that whiteboard with you and leave the room because nobody cares.
Yeah.
On top of that, like, you start, especially with college, like when I worked in the college sector, like you have to start to appreciate the real issues at hand, which in college, like sometimes it's financially, like, or the listeners, like you might not have a lot of money for protein. Well, when you start breaking down protein grams per cost, whey protein is super cheap.
Yes.
Like 25 grams of whey protein.
Bottle and they go, oh, it's $50. I don't know. But like, okay, break that down within like organic chicken breasts or like,
sure.
It's not, you can't even compare
No,
it.
I think I did it the other day because this was a project I had our intern go through, but it's like, if you get like your standard 5-pound protein with 70 servings or whatever it is, it comes out to like 50 cents for 25 grams of protein.
Right.
Well, if you break down chicken, like it's more expensive. So you might like, it's sure food is option one. Like, okay, I get it. But at times, like me personally, I take a protein shake when I wake up and at night before I go to bed. And that's mainly because I don't like eating breakfast. Like, it just is, I got too much going on. I don't want to worry about it. But I know I need my 40 grams when I wake up. So once I have that, I'm good now. So now if breakfast comes my way, great. It's just more protein. But if it doesn't, I got my 40. I'm good.
Yep.
It's cheap. It's convenient. It's fast. So
that's exactly how I look at it. Okay, back to the speed round.
Yes.
Calvin wants to become a strength coach. He needs to be hired by you. First of all, don't do it. That'd be a very bad hire.
Calvin. Come on, Calvin.
He wants to become a strength coach. What are you looking at? Not the degrees, not the certification. What are you looking at as a person? What does he need?
Energy.
Energy.
And not like hype energy, because like that's not everyone's personality.
Yeah.
Like, and I get that. Like, not everybody's the hype strength coach. That's okay. You don't have to be. Like, I know very good strength coaches who don't ever hype up. But when I say energy, it's like, what is the mood when you walk in the room? Like, can I tell you're excited to be here? Can I tell you're happy to be here? Can I tell that you really appreciate, like, every day when I walk in, I'm like, yo, this is the dream job. And am I feeling that from that individual? So when I started thinking about, like, especially in the NBA, it's like, yo, I got to spend a lot of time with you.
Right.
Are you making me smile or are you not making me smile?
Yeah. Are you an energy giver or an energy taker?
That's it. And if you're an energy giver, all the other stuff can be taught. But it's hard to teach, especially by the time people are applying for jobs with us. You're like, you're mid-20s probably. I can't really change who you are. I can give you articles to read. I can give you podcasts to see. Come check out this one.
Yeah.
But PJF. PJF. Shout out. But I can't teach you to make people smile.
No.
If you got that, we're good. We'll figure out the rest.
Right. 100%. When we go through these hundreds of intern applications, like, we'll have the craziest, like, doctors and guys with the craziest degrees. And I'm like, but do I like being around you?
Right.
You know, I'll hire somebody without a degree before I'll hire somebody who just doesn't have a personality.
Yep.
Because like we talked about, it doesn't matter what you know. It matters if you can get the buy-in.
Yep.
And you're not going to get the buy-in if you're not a dope person.
Yeah.
So you got to be a dope person. You got to be able to bring energy. And like you said, I like that you mentioned you don't got to be the hoorah coach.
Right.
You don't got to be in there screaming at people. If that's you, then be you.
Yes.
But you got to be you.
Yes.
Like, that's not me. Every now and then I'll kind of raise my voice, but like I command respect just without raising my voice. And that's where it needs to be. I always say, like, if you have to raise your voice to get your athlete's attention, they don't really respect you. And so when I say something, they listen.
Facts.
I could whisper it, and they're going to listen, right?
Yes.
It's not about raising your voice. It's not about being the hoorah coach. I know we want to hype them up and motivate them, but on the court, you're not going to be there to motivate them.
Yes.
When they're on the road and the fans are cheering against them, motivation has to come internally. So I don't think the hoorah coach is the way that you have to go.
For sure. Nah, for sure. And Well, you just said it, I think hits it on the head. Like if you have to raise your voice, if you have to play the authority position to get respect, it's not respect.
It's too late.
That's just people probably.
You also can't play the authority in the NBA.
For sure.
These guys are too high where it's like, oh, you're trying to have authority over me?
Yep.
That's a wrap.
No, it's a wrap.
They'll shut down. They'll go the exact opposite way to prove a point.
Absolutely. No, it's not even a level playing field. Like I always look at my job as like, although I work for a team, like I work for each player. Like,
Yeah.
I'm here for you. I'm your support system, and I'm here to give you whatever you need. And I'm never gonna raise my voice. Like I don't think I've ever raised my voice at a player, because ultimately it's your career. Like I'm not gonna preach. What I preach to our players is like this to anyone. Like this is your career, right? It doesn't matter what you're doing. That is your career. You need to take ownership of your career. So if you're not taking ownership of your career, why would I get upset and raise my voice? Like, no, it's your career. So if you don't want to work, well, that's your career. That's your money. That's your bag. Are you affecting? You're not affecting my bag. You're affecting your bag.
Right.
Because I don't get paid by the session. Like I tell guys, I don't get paid by the session. Like now I'm here for you 24/7. I'm locked in with you. It's just on you to make that decision. It's like the red pill or the blue pill.
Right.
Like, come down with me. We can get rocking. But if you don't, like, well, now I'm just here for you.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not going to, like, force you to be great. Like, I can't make you be great.
100%. 100%. Okay, you get a guy all about health. This dude is mad skilled. You just got to keep him on the court. Would you rather have him be insanely flexible, hypermobile, or insanely tight? You can't get him into your deep squat position.
Shoots.
2 options.
Okay.
He's got to stay healthy. He's
Stiff.
winning games for you.
Stiff.
Yeah.
I'm going stiff.
Me too.
And mainly, and I think you teed it up because you used the word flexibility, but like especially hypermobility, like that's just a risk waiting to happen because you don't control that.
Yep.
I had a female athlete that comes to mind, and she was hypermobile in her lumbar spine. And so I'm sitting there trying to teach a hinge, and I'm using cues and all this stuff, and I realized like she doesn't even feel that position. So we had to go to some film to show her and clean it up through that. But like, especially hypermobility and flexibility in general, if you don't own the position, then it's really just risk because now you're getting into ranges without control, without strength, without eccentric strength to slow joints down. Good luck.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're stiff, well, too much stiffness is not a good thing, but you made me choose one, so I'll choose that.
Right.
But there's probably some protective mechanisms to stiffness, and there's definitely performance mechanisms there. So
there is. Yeah, I mean, I'm always preaching, hey, let's get you sort of in the middle. Let's have a good balance. But that's always a question that I've played around with, and I always go with the stiff. And like a lot of the most healthy guys in the NBA that I've trained are insanely stiff. Like they freak me out when I go in to do like our flexibility tests. Like initially I'm freaking out. But then I look at the games missed and I'm like, you're healthier than everybody else.
Yep.
So I'm not saying like more stiffness is better, but that guy who's extremely stiff but strong, they're going to strain one hamstring a year. They're at more of a risk for a strained muscle, but less of a risk of a catastrophic joint injury. And so when you look at total games missed, these hypermobile guys are missing a lot more games because their injuries are a lot more serious.
For sure. And if you're stiff, the human system is one smart. Like there's a reason we adapt.
Yes.
And so if you're stiff, you're just gonna go to your preferred positions when you play. Like if you're a stiff guy, you're probably not gonna find yourself out of stiff rank. Like that guy's not landing from a dunk in a deep squat and worried about a groin strain or like
100%.
No, you just don't move. Okay, cool.
Right.
Like, but at least you're safe.
Yep. Okay. You got to get a guy jacked. You got to get his upper body bigger. Okay. Maybe you got pressure from the coaches. Maybe you got pressure from the GM saying, we just need this guy to be bigger and look physically better.
Yeah.
Would you rather do barbell bench press? Would you rather do push-ups, progressing into weighted push-ups, or dumbbell bench press?
Easy. Dumbbells.
Yeah?
Yeah. Barbell, I like barbell because the absolute load is typically going to be higher.
Right.
But you're forcing shoulders into joint positions that may not be conducive. And so if I only had to pick one, I'm going to do it a lot, and I wouldn't put guys into that internal rotation of a bench all the time.
True.
Push-ups I like, but the loading, I think potential is, I guess if you weight it, it can get there. But there's more mechanics involved with the push-up. Like most guys, even with zero training age, you can lay on a bench and dumbbell press. And if we cue like a 45-degree dumbbell angle, you're probably going to be pretty good. So
yeah.
And now I can just play around with like the same dumbbell can be used for I think we can modify that movement a fair amount of ways. Like a push-up, you're going to have to load it up very heavy to get to like a 3 reps.
Right.
And then the other end of that range is going to be limited to like, I guess 30, 40 reps, depending on who you are. But like, no one can do just 100 solid push-ups. Some people can, but like NBA guys can't.
Yeah.
Whereas you get dumbbells, like I got a rack of dumbbells right there. You can grab the 40s and go for 50, or you can grab the 80s and go for 8, or you can grab the 100s and go like, it's just easy.
Right.
So I'm going with the easy win.
The other thing that I don't love about push-ups is that loaded flexion for these guys, because the wrist is so delicate in basketball with how many shots you're getting. Usually their wrists are sore as hell anyways. So to put them in that load, and so I'll usually use like dumbbells. I'll put them in a neutral grip.
Yep.
But that would be my worry when really thinking about loading up the push-up heavy.
Yep.
Okay. Olympic lifting. Do you have to do it for basketball, or do you just need some of the variations, or do you not need it at all?
You don't need it at all. It's an option, just like everything's an option. But I always talk about, to me, exercise is just a means to stimuli.
Yeah.
I don't really care how we get it. Like, so yeah, I mean, variations of it are good because it's a nice way to load heavy and still do explosive things. But you don't necessarily need anything. Like you can get guys to jump high by just using their body weight.
Yeah.
Vert code.
Vert code.
Like, come on now.
That's the best Olympic lifting alternative. Just the vert code.
Vert code Olympic lifting.
Yeah.
Paul, there's no lifting. No, it doesn't matter. It's the best.
It's the best alternative. Yeah, that's what I always say. I mean, it's about powerful triple extension, and there's so many ways that we could do that.
Yep.
And there's so many ways we could do that with a lower learning curve, right? We can get them max intent in day one.
Yep.
Because the argument for Olympic lifting, some coaches who will say it's not that hard to teach. Mm-hmm. I agree, it's not that hard to teach, but it's hard to teach and for them to master to a level where they can get max intent. That might take years for them to get max intent, because you're always going to have those safety barriers in the brain.
For sure.
And when you have those safety barriers, you work at 60, 70, 80%, but you don't get to 100.
For sure. Like it's there are strength coaches that like go crazy about the stuff, but I'm like, it's as simple as what you just said. Until you are an Olympic weightlifter, then there's a technical proficiency limiting factor. Mm-hmm. And even with those guys there are, or gals, but in basketball, for us to reach that, even an appreciable amount of technical proficiency that would allow us to fully intent and fully display explosiveness or power would take a long time. But I can get higher outputs immediately by just do a loaded jump. There's no teaching curve. There's no wrist issues. There's no loading. You don't have to catch anything. Like, it just is easy. So now I'm not like shooting it down. Like, there's value in them for sure. But if I have to choose, then I'm probably gonna go with other things.
100%. Well, I think that just about wraps it up. I know I took up a good chunk of your time. You got a lot going on right now. Big things popping up in your world. Always grateful to get some of your time. And I know that our followers, our listeners, we call them squids. I don't know if you know this, but I call my listeners squids. My squids got better today.
I like that.
And so I think from the specifics that you talked about, that's huge, but just your story, like that's motivation, because we got a lot of young strength coaches on the grind, old strength coaches, any field. Like if you're trying to get to that next level, this dude's grind, you got to respect. So I appreciate you being here, bro.
Yes, sir, man. I appreciate you having me. Appreciate sharing some time. We went to dinner before. Awesome. Always a pleasure. And yeah, man, to the squids, just keep going, man. Wherever you at, man, just keep going.
Yep. Just be a better version of your squid self.
I like that.
That's what it's about.
We got a lot of like bars in this podcast. We need shirts.
Bars.
There's some bars in here.
We do. We need shirts just based on this episode.
Yeah, facts.
I love it. All right, you get 10%.
That's cool.
10%. You cool with that?
I mean, I was going to get 0, so I appreciate it. So.
All right, I'll chip you 10.
All
right, my squids. This episode was very, very, very valuable. Hey, make sure that you guys check out pjfperformance.net if you're trying to sign up for our Vert Code programs. We got the Vert Code Bodyweight. We got the Vert Code Elite. We're getting these gains. Also, check out this shirt I'm wearing. We just dropped our merch. It's actually not dropped. It's not out yet, so don't hit me up yet. But pay attention to our next episode and to Instagram. I'm going to announce the official drop. We got long sleeve tees, short sleeve tees, hoodies. Let's get it.